So today I'm going to discuss about the miscellaneous topics in epidemiology. The reference textbooks are the same, Sobin, Peter, and Park. So you can see a few questions which is overlapping, which is not coming under the portion of epidemiology. So I'll be discussing few topics here. Okay, I'll be discussing these two chapters mainly: concepts of health and disease and levels of evidence. Okay. First and foremost, what is health? You have to study the definition of health. I mean, you have to understand the definition of health. What is important is who gave the definition and which year. Okay, and this definition can or cannot be asked, but anyway, just understand. Okay, so WHO definition was given in the year 1948. It states that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well being and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So, it is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well being, not merely absence of a disease or infirmity. Okay, and it was modified in the year 1978, and they have added a small statement, that is, the ability to lead a socially and economically productive life. Okay, the definition is keep on changing or keep on updating. In 1957, operational definition of health was given by WHO. So it has got a narrow sense and it has got a broad sense. Okay, so narrow sense definition is as follows: there is no obvious evidence of a disease, that is, a person is functioning normally, which means the several organs of the body are functioning adequately in themselves and in relation to one another, which implies a kind of equilibrium or homeostasis. Okay, so all the organs are functioning properly and it implies a kind of equilibrium and homeostasis. That is the definition of health in narrow sense, which was given by WHO in 1957. Okay, next is another operation definition of health, same thing, that is its broad sense, given by WHO in 1957. So according to this, it is a condition or a quality of the human organism expressing the adequate functioning of the organism in given conditions, whether it is genetical or environmental. Okay, so just understand these definitions. Okay, now we are moving on to the changing concepts of health. Okay, this is also very important. Okay, so we have four changing concepts, that is, first we have biomedical concept, then ecological, then psychosocial, and then holistic concept. Okay, so let's see each in detail. So what is biomedical concept? Okay, biomedical concept considers health as an absence of a disease. So just concentrate on the word or on the sentence that I've highlighted. Okay, so that is the key term. So they'll ask you like absence of a disease means is coming under the is, or it is the key point in which concepts of health. So it is biomedical concept. Okay, so biomedical concept considered health as the absence of a disease. So if a person was free from the disease, okay, if there is no signs of disease, if he was free from disease, he was considered to be healthy. So that is what biomedical concept suggests. Okay, and it has its roots or it has the basis of germ theory of the disease. So it considers human body as a machine, the disease as a breakdown of the machine, and the doctor as a patient, doctor as a person who repairs the machine. Okay, machine as a breakdown of the machine and doctor who repairs the machine. That is what biomedical concepts considered the human, that is how biomedical concepts emphasized on. Okay, so the main concept is health is they considered health as an absence of a disease, and if a person was free from the disease, he was found to be healthy. Okay, however, it has got certain limitations. What are the limitations? It has minimized the role of environmental, social, psychological, and cultural determinants of health. It didn't take into consideration about the environmental factors affecting health, social factors, psychological factors, and cultural factors. So it was inadequate to solve some of the major health problems. For example, malnutrition. There is no signs of a disease in a person who is undernourished or who is malnutrition. And also chronic diseases. It will take a long time to appear. So when we are seeing a patient, he or she apparently may be healthy, but he will be having underlying diseases. So in that case, drug abuse, mental illness, environmental pollution, all these factors or all these things, the biomedical concept fail to explain. Okay, so that is how this theory got or this concept got discarded. Okay, so biomedical concept we have to discard, and then comes ecological concept. Okay, so ecological concept, it viewed health as a dynamic equilibrium between man and his environment. So environment is the highlight, is the key term here. So EE, environment and ecological concept. Okay, so here ecological concept means it viewed health as as a dynamic equilibrium between man and his environment. If a man and his environment has got a dynamic equilibrium, then he can be considered as healthy. Okay, according to this concept, disease is defined as a maladjustment of the human organism to his environment. Okay, so here they give more importance to the environment, and disease is considered as a maladjustment to this human organism to his environment. Okay, so that is what ecological concept stressed on. Next is psychosocial concept. Okay, so psychosocial concept give importance to social and psychological, cultural, economic, and political factors. So all those social things it gave importance. Okay, so according to this, development in social science revealed that health is not only a biomedical phenomenon but which is influenced by social, psychological, cultural, economic, and political factors of the people are also concerned. So it give importance to social, psychological, cultural, economic, and political factors. Okay, so according to this concept, health is both a biological and a social phenomenon. That is what psychosocial concept stressed on. Okay, the last one is holistic concept. Okay, so it is a synthesis of all the above concepts or the compilation of all the above concepts. Okay, so it recognizes the strength of social, economic, political, and environmental influences on health. So all those factors, social, economic, political, and environmental influences were taken into consideration. So it was a multidimensional process involving the well-being of the whole person in the context of his environment. So according to this concept, health means a sound mind in a sound body, in a sound family, in a sound environment. A sound mind in a sound body, in a sound family, in a sound environment. That is what holistic concept suggests. Okay, so it implies that all sectors of the society have an effect on health. For example, all the sectors, agriculture, animal husbandry, food, education, housing, public work, communications, and other sectors, all these factors has got an influence. It is not just mere the absence of the disease, it involves all the factors has got an influence on health. So these are the four changing concepts of health. Okay, so biomedical, ecological, psychosocial, and the last one is holistic concept. So I hope it is clear. So next we are moving on to the determinants of health. Okay, determinants are otherwise known as risk determinants. Okay, so determinants of health are the factors that are affecting health when we explain it in simpler terms. So it can be either the factors that we have been exposed to or the factors within us. Okay, so these 12 determinants, you have to just study their names, because in sometimes they'll give you as a question, for example, identify which among these are the determinants of health. Okay, and they will give you few options, like behavioral and some other things they will give you. So you have to identify which one is the correct determinants, and sometimes they will ask you like, um, human rights is a example for determinants, risk determinants, risk factors, then something else they'll give. So you have to know which one is the correct risk determinants. Okay, so first is biological, that is our genetic constitution, then behavioral, environmental, socio-economic, health system, socio-cultural, aging of the population, science and technology, information and communication, gender, equity and social justice, and human rights. I think no need to explain, these all are like self-explaining terms. So just study these things, just the names. Okay, so these are the factors which are affecting the health. So next we are moving on to the concept of disease causation. We can explain this concept of disease causation under three main categories. So we have theories, then we have pathogenesis of the disease, and iceberg phenomenon. So moving on to the theories, we have old theories, then we have germ theory, epidemiological triad, theory of multifactorial causation, and web of causation. Coming to the old theories, okay, till the end of 18th century, various theories were in existence. So those theories were supernatural theory of the disease. So supernatural theory of the disease believed that the disease was due to the curse of God, that is, or due to an evil eye. Okay, and Ayurveda considered that disease is due to the imbalance of tridoshas. The tridoshas considered in Ayurveda were Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata, air; Pitta is bile, and Kapha is mucus. The imbalance between these three can leads to a disease. Okay, that is about Ayurvedic concept. Then Chinese medicine believed that the disease is caused due to imbalance of male principle, that is yang, and female principle, yin. Okay, these were the old theories. After that, germ theory came into exist. So germ theory tells you that There was an agent that is responsible for the disease. The agent enters a man and it will out results in disease. Okay, so Louis Pasteur demonstrated the presence of bacteria in the air, and Robert Koch showed that anthrax was caused due to bacteria. So that is how they came to a conclusion that an agent, which and when it enters into the human body or into a man, it will finally lead to the disease. But this theory was discarded. Okay, it was not due to a single agent the disease was happening, it was due to the interplay between other factors. Some other factors also were responsible for causing the disease. So, because of this drawback, this theory was discarded, and then came the concept of epidemiological triad. So, it is due to the interplay between agent, host, and the environment can lead to a disease in humans. I mean, a disease in anyone. Okay, so that is like epidemiological triad. So next comes theory of multifactorial causation. Okay, the epidemiological triad is very important. Okay, on the basis of this epidemiological triad, we are discussing everything: epidemiology of dental caries, periodontal disease, and oral cancer. That we'll be dealing in later sessions, but this is very important. You have to keep in mind about the epidemiological triad. Then comes theory of multifactorial causation. It was put forward by Pettenkofer. Remember this name, Pettenkofer's theory of multifactorial causation. So it was recognized that the disease is not caused by an organism, but also so many predisposing factors can contribute to the occurrence of a disease. Okay, especially this modern disease, the disease of civilization like lung cancer, diabetes, coronary artery disease, mental illness are caused due to so many factors, just not due to just one factor. Okay, the disposing factors include socioeconomic, cultural, genetic, psychological factors, so many things. Okay, that is what multifactorial causation, that is multiple factors are responsible for the evolution of a disease. It is not due to a single organism. So that is put forward by Pettenkofer. Then comes web of causation. It is just like as the name suggests, it is a like a web. Okay, so it was suggested by McMahon and Puck. So remember these names, McMahon and Puck, and it is best suitable for chronic diseases. Okay, so see this flow chart. Okay, according to this flow chart, stress can induce hormonal imbalance, which can lead to obesity, which can cause hardening of the arteries and finally leads to stroke. Similarly, stress can lead to diet imbalance, which can lead to obesity, which can cause hardening of the arteries and again leads to stroke. Then stress can induce smoking, increase smoking habit, which can cause heart disease, stroke. So all these factors is leading to a disease, heart disease, stroke, a hypertensive disease. So all these factors, it is just like a web. So if is there is if we can break any one chain or any one link in any of these things, it can leads to the reduction in the disease, or it can totally leads to the disease mitigation. For example, if we control smoking or the smoking behavior is controlled, a heart disease, occurrence of a heart disease is reduced. For example, if we exercise regularly, so that if you watch your diet, obesity will be reduced and finally it will reduce incidence of stroke. So the biggest challenge is to identify the strongest link and break that chain, so that web will be broken and it will causing or it will cause a reduced incidence or prevalence of the disease. So that is what web of causation suggests. Okay, so theories are over. So next we are moving on to the iceberg phenomenon or iceberg of the disease. It is like the clinically evident disease is like a tip of the iceberg, and the unevident cases, the cases which have not been diagnosed, are seen as the hidden part. Okay, so tip of the iceberg is only clinically evident, and subclinical cases are more common. They are like seen inside. Okay, so a certain portion of this maybe can be detectable by screening. So you know this example, like our corona cases, like only tip of the iceberg is only seen. So many cases are going undiagnosed, right? So that is iceberg of disease suggest. Okay, only tip of the iceberg is seen, that is clinically evident cases. Subclinical cases are like hidden. Next we are going to learn some new terminologies, that is risk factors and risk groups. Okay, so what are risk factors? Okay, you might be seeing these options, risk factors as an option in n number of questions in epidemiology. Okay, so don't get confused. Risk factors are nothing but, so when the disease agent is not firmly established, the etiology will be generally expressed in terms of risk factors. Okay, so when we are not having a correct establishment or association with the disease agent, okay, when the disease agent is not firmly established, okay, then we can tell the etiology in terms of risk factors. When I'll tell you an example, you will understand it more. For example, coronary disease. Okay, the risk factors are smoking. Smoking can leads to coronary artery disease, diabetes, elevated cholesterol, obesity. All these are linked to coronary artery disease, but we cannot tell that smoking is the only reason for coronary artery disease. No. So all these factors, so that association is like not firmly established. So all these factors are leading to coronary artery disease. So that is how we are expressing it in terms of risk factors. Okay, not as a causative agent. Clear? So these are all the risk factors of CHD which can causes coronary artery disease. Okay. Then the needy groups. So if you're doing some intervention such as vulnerable population, for example, pregnant mothers, pregnant ladies, risk mothers, then handicapped, such kind of people are known as risk groups. That is a vulnerable population, the needy groups. If you're doing some kind of intervention, these people are like mostly they are in need of that intervention. So such kind of groups are known as risk groups. Okay, the needy groups. And the approach that we are doing is otherwise known as risk approach. Okay, so that is about risk factors and risk groups. Clear? Okay, now we are moving to another topic, that is concepts of disease control. Okay, so we have three things. Okay, disease control, disease elimination, and disease eradication. Okay, so these also you will be seeing in the various options, and I think questions are also being asked. So just understand the concept. Okay, so disease control, it is just aiming at the reduction or reducing the duration, incidence, and complications of the disease. Just that we are trying to reduce the duration, the incidence, and the complications of a particular disease. That is about disease control. Okay, now next we have disease elimination. Okay, the disease elimination is about interrupting the transmission of the disease. We are trying to interrupt the transmission of the disease in which the transmission rate is very high. In such areas or the transmission rate is very high, we are trying to interrupt the transmission of the disease. So that is like disease elimination. And the disease eradication, as the name suggests, it is like tear out by roots. Okay, so we are just eradicating, we are taking it completely out of the place. So that is what disease eradication means. So till date, the only disease that have been globally eradicated is smallpox. Okay, and disease elimination, you might have heard like polio, Kala-Azar has been eliminated in certain areas. I think we are trying to interrupt the transmission of the disease. Okay, so this is the concepts of disease control. Clear? Now we are moving on to the concepts in prevention. Okay, so we have mainly four levels: primordial, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Okay, in a few textbooks you can see just primary, secondary, and tertiary, because primordial is basically a primary prevention. So we just categorized it as another level. That's it. So primary includes primordial itself, primordial also. Okay, so you can just see primordial, primary, secondary, and tertiary in few textbooks. But ideally speaking, we have four levels: primordial, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Okay, then what is primordial prevention? Okay, so primordial prevention is something that is like we are trying to prevent the emergence or the development of a risk factors in a population in which they haven't occurred at all. Okay, we are trying to prevent the emergence of something in which there is no evidence, or in which that disease or that risk factors have not been occurred yet. Okay, so that is what we are aiming at, primordial prevention. We are trying to prevent the emergence of risk factors. Okay, that is what primordial prevention aims at. Next is primary. So primordial is like basically it is a primary prevention in its purest form, but we have just categorized it as another level. That's it. Okay, next is primary. So primary prevention is like the action that has been taken prior to the onset of a disease. Thereby we can remove the possibility that the disease will not occur. So it is like just prior to the onset of the disease, we are taking some action so that the disease won't occur further. That is what primary prevention aims at. Okay, next we have secondary prevention. Okay, so secondary prevention is nothing but the actions that we are taking to halt the progress of the disease at its incipient stage. So here the disease has occurred, so we are taking the actions to prevent the progress of the disease at its incipient stage to prevent further future complications. Okay, so disease has occurred, so we are trying to halt its progress at the incipient stage itself. So that is our secondary prevention. So in secondary and tertiary the disease has already occurred. In primordial and primary the disease has not yet occurred. Remember this. Okay, so secondary so we have to, the challenge in secondary prevention is like we have to identify the disease at a much earlier stage. So it can be done by using screening. Okay, screening I'll be dealing with you as a separate portion. Screening is an important chapter, so I'll tell the details of screening in a different class. Okay, so this much you remember: secondary prevention, to identify the cases, screening is very very important. Okay, then tertiary is like the actions that has been taken at a later stage. The diseases which has been advanced beyond the early stage, we are still we can still, it is possible to prevent, or it is possible to reduce the sufferings. That is mainly by disability limitation and rehabilitation. So tertiary prevention is done in those patients who have been suffering since long, that is like terminally ill patients. So the disease advanced, the progression of the disease has been advanced to its such an late stage, so we can just aim is to just reduce their sufferings. That is mainly by disability limitation and by rehabilitation. So that is about tertiary prevention. Okay, let's look onto the table. So primordial, what are the stages of the disease, underlying conditions leading to causation. So we are mainly aiming at the risk factors. So target population is total population and the selected group. The primary, specific causal factors, we can, total population is the target, selected group and healthy individuals is also the target population. Then secondary prevention, early stages of the disease, that is to prevent further complications. So in that, patients will be, because they are already diagnosed with the disease. Tertiary is also at the late stage of the disease, and the target population will be patients because they are also diagnosed with the disease. Clear? So next we are moving on to the modes of intervention and different levels of prevention. This is also very important. So primordial prevention, as I told you earlier, it is all about awareness program. So we are giving health promotion, health education. It all comes under primordial prevention. Okay, we are educating the people. Okay, primary prevention, it is like specific protection. Okay, specific protection such as immunization. We are giving vaccinations, immunizations to prevent the progress of the disease, so that the disease won't occur further in that particular community. That is what primary prevention aims at. So okay, and this I'll tell you, in some areas you can see the examples overlapping with primordial and primary. So primordial is nothing but it is basically a primary prevention. We have just categorized it as separate level. Okay, so under primary prevention, health promotion and specific protection can come. Clear? Okay, so that is about primary prevention. Then secondary prevention, it is like early diagnosis and treatment. I have told you that is through screening. Tertiary prevention is disability limitation and rehabilitation. So this is very important. You have to study the modes of intervention. Okay, then I'll tell you with certain dental examples. For example, if you're applying fluoride, if you're giving Pitt and Fisher sealants, fluoride varnish or fluoride mouth rinse, fluoride gels and all. So it will comes under which kind of prevention? Because Pitt and Fisher sealants is all like preventive procedures. The disease has not occurred. We are trying to prevent the caries in a healthy individual. So that's all will come under primary prevention. Okay, specific protection we are giving. Clear? So when it comes to preventive resin restoration, that is PRR, in that case, it is the tooth has already been caries or it is already been decayed. We are trying to prevent the progression of the disease by giving a preventive resin restoration. So in that case, it will comes under secondary prevention. In tertiary prevention, all this pulpectomy, root canal, so all comes under secondary prevention because the tooth has already been decayed. We are just giving, or we are just trying to reduce the disability. So curettage and all will comes under tertiary prevention. Scaling will come under secondary because there is already a disease. Otherwise people won't do scaling, right? Because there is already calculus and we are trying to prevent the progression by prophylaxis. So prophylaxis will comes under secondary prevention. So I hope it is clear for you. Okay. So next, this concept of disability limitation, you have to just understand the terminologies, okay? Because this is being asked in your AAPG chapter and miscellaneous portions of the last in the last part of your pulse, okay? So I have included it in this because it is coming as a continuation of this chapter, okay? So if you're not finding any questions related to this, you may find in the coming chapters, okay? So concept of disability was described by WHO. So it is like, first we have a disease, then it leads to impairment, then it leads to disability, and then it leads to handicap. So handicap is the final outcome, okay? So disease leads to impairment, leads to disability, leads to handicap. Okay, let's see in detail. So impairment is like any loss or abnormality of anatomical or physiological function. Okay, any loss. So a loss of an organ or loss of anything or abnormality of anything, it is known as impairment. Okay, either psychological, physiological or anatomical function. That is what impairment means. Okay, then disability is like the affected person is unable to do a normal activity which is considered normal for his age. So that is a disability. Okay, this impairment will make a person not able to perform his normal activity which is considered to be a normal for his age. That is what disability means. Okay, then what is handicap? Handicap is like more kind of socially involved thing. It is like more discuss about social aspects. Okay, that is means as a result of this disability, a person feeling certain kind of disadvantages, that is he is not able to perform that has been expected for him to perform or play in the society. He is not able to perform his activities or perform his duties, okay, that has been expected to play in the society. That is finally results in handicapped. So that is what I told. It is more of kind of, it involves a social element. Okay, just see that example, the disease accident, it can be considered equivalent to a disease. As a result of accident, there will be a loss of abnormality, loss of any organ or any kind of abnormality. So here it is like loss of food, so that is impairment. So as a result of this, what is, he is not able to perform his activities, he cannot walk, that is the disability. And finally what it leads to, it leads to unemployment, that is like he is not able to perform his duties. That is handicapped means. Okay, so understand this concept. Okay, so this is the concept of disability given by WHO. Clear? So now the last thing is hierarchy of evidence. Okay, so in your pulse they have given you levels of evidence. I haven't seen that levels of evidence in any of the standard books in PARC or in Soban Peter. So what is given in the pulse, you study it like that only. And also there is one more thing I have seen is like panel studies in pulse. So that is like they have told it as longitudinal studies that has been done at repeated intervals. So we are evaluating it at repeated intervals. That is known as panel studies. That is what they have mentioned in pulse. So that also I have not included because I have not seen in any of the standard books. So you just study what they have told. Okay, so hierarchy of evidence means we have a scientific evidence hierarchy. Okay, that is when we are quoting something or when we are suggesting something, we have to suggest or we have to quote the things that have got the highest evidence. Okay, so the topmost situation is occupied by systematic review and meta-analysis because it is the qualitative synthesis of all the studies that has been published. Okay, so first is systematic review. So if you have any doubts regarding the effectiveness of Pitt and Fisher sealant, okay, how much caries reduction it is giving, we have to refer a systematic review and we have to see 36.7 that has been suggested by so many people. And what are the drawbacks? So everything will be mentioned in the systematic review. So that is why it is known as it has got the highest hierarchy among scientific evidence. So first one is systematic review and meta-analysis, then it is randomized control trial, followed by cohort, case control, then in vitro animal studies, and last is case report, case series, papers, letters and all. So this is the hierarchy. We have studied also like this only. First is descriptive, that is case report, then we have cross sectional, then we have case control, then cohort, then RCT, then systematic review. So non scientific evidences are like YouTube videos, all those news websites and all. So when you're quoting something, when you're checking for something, if you need an authenticity, you have to go for the papers or the particles that have got the highest scientific evidence. So this is the order. Okay, so you have to study this also. Okay, So I think almost all the topics in epidemiology has been covered. Now you will be seeing some chapters related to health promotion, some questions related to health promotion and health education that will be dealt as a separate session. Next, I think some questions related to biostatistics will also be there that you can solve after studying biostatistics. And I think screening you will be having some positive predictive value, negative predictive value. Some questions will also be there that is also related to screening that will be dealt in another class. So that is all about epidemiology. Try to solve the questions, study well. Okay, thank you.